Joyce. Romero. Becky Cook. And then
Bruce Flanagan.
and say where you work.
A College of Business Public Affairs Dean's Office.
Andy San Martino, Graduate Social Work.
Patty Zelak, Admissions Office.
Angela Howard, International Programs.
Lillian Kluger, Registrar's Office. Tom Carney, Honors College, then Gilbert 3 Institute.
Tony Kershaw, Pennsylvania Writing and Literature Project.
Pat Whitaker, I'm retired. From the registrar's office.
Valiant Steinway Information Center.
Jeff Jones, Life Transition Services.
And Janet Colliton, I'm the other speaker, Colliton Law Associates.
There you go.
And I'm here with,
Teresa Farrell. I work with Janet also at Colliton Law Associates.
and Teresa's another attorney in our office. So.
Hello.
And she has a graduate degree in elder law, so we're expanding.
Yes. My pleasure.
Then this is Sandra. Or is this
I don't think we can quite reach.
Well, thank you for joining us. This is our last presentation of the academic year. And we again welcome Janet Colliton, elder care attorney, whose offices are here in Westchester, and her brother Jeffrey Jones, who is the CEO of Life Transition Services. And we're so happy that they're here today. This is their second presentation to our group, and they're going to be talking about Social Security. So I hand the floor to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joyce. I don't know if it makes a difference if I stand or not. I'm more comfortable sitting. Great. Okay. If any of you picked up the Wall Street Journal this morning, these subjects are always in the news, and the headline was "Stress Rises on Social Security." And my contention would be that what it's saying is that it will be a few more years, there are a few years earlier when Social Security Trust Fund is supposed to run out of money, meaning that people would get 75% of their benefit instead of 100% of their benefit, and meaning that it's a pay-as-you-go kind of system. I would stress that I believe that the rumors of the demise of Social Security are highly exaggerated, and that although there are some adjustments that need to be made to the system, that overall Social Security I think is going to be with us for a long time. And for people who are concerned that that is the reason why they withdraw early from the system, I think that is not necessary, that's an over-exaggeration. There are a number of suggestions that have been made about the Social Security system to improve its financial ability to continue throughout the years. Some of those could include taxing the full amount of the benefit as one example, or extending the amount that is taxed. Another possibility is that we might wait to collect yet later on Social Security, but these things have not been acted upon at this time. The last major adjustment to Social Security was during the Reagan administration with the Greenspan Commission, and that's when Social Security benefits were taxed for the first time. But anyway, I wanted to address that because I hear that so often about the Social Security system, and I think it's important to put it in perspective and to realize that we can expect to receive Social Security well into the future. At least I think our lifetimes, and I think well beyond that. My daughter's 15, so you know I look into the future. I'm going to. We have a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to go through that first, and then take questions. And I recognize that we have a limited amount of time, So I'm going to try to cover a lot of territory in a short time. I want you to understand that I'm not going to be able to address every specific instance. Like, for instance, if you say to me, I am 67 years old and my husband is 68 and we want to retire on such and such a date, how much am I going to get in Social Security? I'm not going to be able to answer that question. But it might be helpful for you to know that there actually are calculators out there that can run these figures, and I work with an outfit that works with these calculators, so that is something that can be determined. Also, on the last page of your materials, you'll see that the Social Security Administration, socialsecurity.gov, also has a calculator. I have not tried it myself, but I liked it better when we were getting the annual reports saying this is what your benefit will be. They discontinued that temporarily, and they say that they're going to reinstate them for those who are age 60 and older. So I'm looking forward to that, so that we get actually a neat statement as to this is what your Social Security benefit will be. Okay. So, starting out, maximizing your Social Security benefits, what you need to know is the subject today. And Jeff, depends on you. Okay, what happens and what doesn't happen at age 65? Now, this goes a bit beyond Social Security. It goes into subjects like Medicare. But since these things are considered so much together, I just wanted to give an idea of that. When I was growing up, everybody figured that age 65 was the magic age when you collect Medicare, you collect Social Security, and you retire. You get the gold launch or whatever was the equivalent. I don't know what, that has changed a great deal. The one thing that has remained constant is that you still sign up for Medicare at age 65. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Now, with Social Security, you have some options. You can claim early Social Security at age 62. And by the way, some of you may know all of this, and it may seem very elementary, but I'm starting from scratch, so if you bear with me. But at age 62, you can get Social Security, but it is at a reduced benefit. It's 25% less than what you would get at full retirement age. Okay. And there are also restrictions on working, so that if you earn more than, and I keep jotting this number down, but I believe it's $14,160. If you earn more than that in a year, then, so your earnings are higher and you're taking Social Security at 62, you are penalized so that $1 of your Social Security is withheld for every $2 of your earnings, until the last year when it's $1 for every $3 of your earnings. So if you intend to continue working and earn more than basically $14,000 a year, there you have two reasons perhaps not to collect Social Security benefits at age 62. One of them being that you get a 25% lower benefit than if you take it at age 66, and the other being that they're going to penalize you on the amount of Social Security that you actually receive during that time period. Okay. Then full retirement age for people today is age 66 instead of age 65. So all of us who waited to be 65 now need to wait another year to reach full retirement age. And at that age, you receive the primary, what they call the primary insurance amount. And it wouldn't be government if it didn't have abbreviations like FRA and PIA and that kind of thing. So full retirement age and primary insurance amount. Now, if you think of this and compare it to, say, those of us who get property tax bills, think of it like only in reverse. The discount period on your property tax bill, when you can pay lower, you get a lower benefit. The actual basic cost of your taxes, your property taxes, which would be the primary insurance amount. And then age 70 is the sort of the gold standard where you get the highest benefit. If you wanted to go beyond age 70, they're not going to give you any special benefit in waiting to collect beyond age 70, so you definitely want to collect by the time you're age 70. As far as retirement is concerned, from your employment, there are retirees as early as 55 or younger, and people can retire as late as 70, or for people like me who are self-employed, the word is pretty much never. But I go to continuing legal education programs with attorneys, and the attorneys come in with walkers. So, which is kind of a scary thought, but we keep on going. On the other hand, we can, we have more than one client, so we can continue on forever if we wish. Okay, the next slide, Medicare. I'm just including this again because part of the basic package, and then I'm going to go off into Social Security. I had an interesting experience recently, and I actually wrote about it in one of my columns, where I went to the Social Security Administration on Westchester Pike and took my little ticket to wait in line, and because I actually, on Thursday of this week, 2 days from now, I'll be 65. I can't believe that, but it's true. But anyway, so in March, so a month before turning 65, as my insurance agent told me, I went to the Social Security Administration. I took my ticket, I waited in line, and I went up to the window and I said, I want to apply for Medicare. And she said, you should do that online. Otherwise, we're going to have to schedule a separate appointment for you. And I left the window and I felt kind of foolish because I wrote a book, actually, a section of a book on Social Security. It's called Elder Law in Pennsylvania. It's one of those technical books that lawyers read, and most people don't, unless you want to fall asleep at night. But I said in the book to apply online, and yet I went in person and applied for benefits. So I didn't even listen to myself. So some of these things you know intellectually, but when it's you, it comes out differently. So I wrote a column about it. But anyway, if you file early for Social Security, then you will, so before your 65th birthday, then you should receive a Medicare card in the mail because they know you're going to turn 65. If you did not file for Social Security, then the month before your 65th birthday, you want to go online and not to the Social Security office, and go on www.socialsecurity.gov, and you want to file for Medicare. The questionnaire is very short. It can be completed in about 15 minutes, and what you need to know is whether you need to apply also for Medicare Part B or Part D, and then answer some basic personal questions about yourself. Now, if you're working, and I'm going to assume that those of us who are in the room, generally speaking, we continue to work. If we have creditable coverage, which would be through the university, I would expect that university coverage would be creditable coverage with your employer, then that insurance coverage, health insurance coverage, is going to be primary, and Medicare is secondary. So, so Medicare would only come in if there was something that your employer's coverage didn't cover. So it's not as important as with someone who has an individual insurance policy. But if you don't have that kind of coverage, then you do need to apply for Medicare B and Medicare D if you expect to have prescription drugs and so on. If you have a question about that, you can ask the HR department, but basically I'm assuming that you all have creditable coverage. Medicare would be secondary, and you don't need to file for Medicare Part B and Part D. If you didn't, then, and didn't file for Medicare B and D at the time of your 65th birthday, then there would be a penalty for having delayed in filing. But in your situation, I don't expect that to apply. Okay. And, okay, let's go to the next. New ways to view Social Security. Social Security has become more important now that we don't have as many defined benefit pension plans. And the return on investments is pitifully small. So when you could make, say, 8–10% return on your investments per year, then Social Security wasn't regarded as that important. When you're making 1% or less on your investments, then Social Security has a better rate of return than most investments out there. So sometimes the strategies adjust accordingly. Social Security gives a steady income, so you can know what it's going to be. It gives lifetime income, so it continues throughout your life. It is inflation adjusted, although the cost of living increases have been erratic. We've gone a couple years without cost of living increase. We had a cost of living increase this year. We seem to do it in the neighborhood of about 3% and then lose 2 years and then go back to about 3%. And Social Security also has survivor benefits. So if a spouse passes away, the surviving spouse might be able to claim on their spouse's benefit. And I'll go into that a little bit. And also, in some situations, I actually have an unusual situation where my daughter, I'm almost 50 years older than my daughter, which, story behind that, but in any event, my daughter is going to be 16 when I'm 66, and she's going to be able to collect on behalf of my benefit on a special strategy known as filing and suspending that we'll talk about later, but at least up to the time she's 18. But spouses also, it's an important thing to look at for spouses. And filing and suspending is an important strategy for spouses that is being looked at more closely now, and I'll explain that. Okay. I have a friend, Peter Mullen, who's with a firm called Sherpa Financial, and who's very into Social Security, and he's used the expression, where can you get 6% return for 4 years and then 8% for 4 years more? And you say, well, okay, where does he come up with that number? Well, if you, as I said, if you if you take, I can't even use retire in conjunction with Social Security because retire and Social Security are now separate. But if you're age 62 and you delay until you're 66, and by the way, that number is going to, for you younger folks, it's going to continue to grow, but not too much, but it will go beyond 66. But if you're age 62 and you hold off until you're 66, then I said that there was a 25% difference. So if you figure 62 to 63, 64, 65, 66, 4 years, 6%, so that's roughly the 25%, it's 24 point whatever. But that's where we come up with the 6% return for 4 years, the difference between taking it at 62 or taking it at 66. And then the 8% for 4 years has to do with if you take it at 70 instead of taking it, so you delay your benefit 4 years longer, then the difference is 8% per year for 4 years, so another 32%. So if you're going to live a long time, and that's really the goal, big unknown, okay? But if you plan on living for a long time, that 32% increase is dramatic. On the other hand, if you expect to have a short life, And so it needs to be built into the planning, and who knows, but these are the uncertainties that we're faced with. Okay. Your Social Security benefits. And I said parentheses, based on your earnings record. Now, you could have Social Security benefits that are based on someone else's earnings record. And that could be either your spouse or a former spouse, if you were married for at least 10 years. Divorcees, I had a lady who was a divorcee, and we had a regular appointment, and I said, did you know you could claim on your divorced spouse's Social Security? And she looked into it, and as a result, she was able to go to a continuing care retirement community and make the difference in sort of the tipping point between whether she could afford it or not, which meant that when I went to Penny's and went shopping for dresses, I no longer could depend on her as a salesperson because she had retired, but, you make sacrifices. But she was ecstatic that she was able to do that based on her divorced spouse's record. And it did not reduce it's not like it took it away from his benefit. But anyway, your Social Security benefits can be based on your earnings record or someone else's earnings record based, usually that's a spouse. But based on your earnings record, it depends on how much you earned, and I put N paid into the Social Security system because sometimes people worked at jobs that didn't pay into Social Security system. The one person I was talking about, the financial planner, for 13 years he worked as a missionary, so money didn't go into the Social Security system, so he lost 13 years on that. And how much you earned during your working years. And also the age at which you begin collecting, and that's one of the things we've been discussing here, 62, 66, 70. Not to say you can't collect in between, 63 or 64, but those are the highlighted, the kind of the benchmark dates. Okay. What happens is this, and by the way, it took me years to figure this out. I would review the benefits of clients who came in, and I would say, well, where did this come from? And it wasn't easy to determine. That information seems to be more readily available now that more of us are turning 66. We start to ask these questions. What happens is that there is an average taken of your 35 best working years. Now, a couple things about that. First of all, it's a weighted average, so that obviously 35 years ago the salary scale was a little bit different than the salary scale that we have today. So they make adjustments basically for inflation. Another thing that is very important is that something that I discovered particularly with women. Several years back, I read an article that was written by a professor at Boston College, and it was called, Why Are So Many Older Women Poor? And I thought that's a very interesting question, because when I would look at their Social Security benefit, there were so many women who had benefits of $400 a month, $500 a month, and I'm saying they weren't. I mean, I know that their income is lower, but I don't understand why the benefit is so low. And the reason for that is the method of calculation. When you talk about the average of 35 years, what happens if you didn't work 35 years, and this is a very important thing to realize, if you did not work 35 years, every one of those years that did not go into the system goes back as 0, and then they divide by 35. So, if you spent time raising your family, those years go back as 0. If you weren't working, say, part-time or from home or whatever. And also, if you stopped work, for instance, to take care of, say, your older parents, so you're not working, those years go back into the system at zero. And if you have 10, 15 years added back at zero, that can really drive down your Social Security amount. And that's important both for women and for men, because if you are married, then your joint, your combined income is much lower. So I recommend to people who have had years out of the system, if they can get back into the system and continue to work, that can help build up their numbers. The first calculation is run when you're at age 62, and they take the average of your 35 best working years. Well, that doesn't mean, when I read this, I said, well, so then if you work after you're 62, you're out of luck. Actually, I would have used another expression, but you're out of luck after you're 62. However, that's not the case. I was encouraged to learn that if you work after age 62, those additional years can add to your benefit, but it can't detract from your benefit. Okay, so you can catch up. It's a strategy that you can stop working and then get back in the workforce and put something in. And if you have those 0 years, anything is better than zero. So it's good to be back in the system. I'm sure there are a lot of legislators who would be surprised that we encourage, really our system encourages women to work for a longer period of time rather than being stay-at-home moms, because that's the way that it works out in dollar amount. Now, there is the alternative for women who have low Social Security, that they can take, if their benefit is low enough that it is less than half of what their, and it's usually I'm talking women and men, I mean it can be reversed, but usually it works that way. They can take half of their spouse's benefit if half of their spouse's benefit is higher. Okay. And then people always ask, what's the maximum benefit? So I spent a little bit of time to make sure that I brought it to date, and my understanding is the maximum benefit at age 66 is $2,513 a month. Of course, you could have cost of living adjustments after that. And if you wait to age 70 and you're at the maximum earning capacity, then it could be 32% higher. Okay. Now, that can be important if you're looking at some of these replacements for monthly earnings, so that there are immediate annuities and that kind of thing that pay a monthly income. And if you wanted to make a comparison as to whether it was worthwhile to go out and believe me, I'm not marketing annuities in this, I'm simply, or suggesting that all are equal, but I'm saying that if you wanted to make a comparison and you've also explored to make sure that this is, a reasonable investment, that this gives you some basis for comparison on these income replacement investments that are out there. By the way, there are articles out there where you'll see that they argue against taking Social Security at a younger age. And I had seen some of them in the past, and I'm glad that there are more people who are coming along to my point of view, which I think is the right point of view. But there's a website called Retire Early, and it says why you shouldn't wait until age 70 to collect Social Security. And there was a strategy, and that has been, it's not really on the table now, where what you could do is you could take Social Security early, then invest, and then pay the Social Security Administration back and say, I made a mistake here, I changed my mind, take the money back, and I'm going to have the higher benefit amount. Well, the Social Security Administration became aware that many people were doing that, and they decided that it was time to clamp down on that. and although it can be done, it's very limited at this point. There is something that you can do if you start out and take an early retirement benefit and then change your mind, which is that at age 66 you can say, I'm going to suspend my benefit, I'm not going to take it between 66 and 70, and you can sort of get back on the train again for 4 years so that you can take advantage of it then. So they're sort of corrective strategies if you took it and then you changed your mind. Okay, the next part, coordinating benefits, let's see, okay, coordinating benefits between husband and wife. Now, I have a handout that, and by the way, the first page of that is actually today's.
Yeah,
It's today's daily local article. Okay. How to maximize your Social Security returns. And then the other one was an older, it was in January, consider Social Security as part of your investment strategy. Okay. And then, now the third one I'm looking at is combined spousal planning for Tom and Nancy Smith. And actually, this I borrowed from my friend, the financial planner, but he gave me permission to use the strategy, and I'm going to use that at this point. So referring to the handout of Tom and Nancy. In fact, I was looking at this when I was writing my newspaper column, and I almost put Nancy in the newspaper column, which would have been embarrassing. So anyway, there are 5 different situations in planning for spousal benefits that are laid out here. And I'm going to try to go through these quickly to give you an idea of what your options might be. And if you look at the next page, so you see combined spousal planning for Tom and Nancy, you look at the next page, Tom and Nancy's summary of scenarios 1 through 5. You'll see what the combined annual income would be when Nancy is at various ages, and the cumulative benefits when Nancy is at these various ages. So you get an idea of a comparison. And this is just one potential set of figures. Everybody has their individual ones, and as I said, there are calculators to deal with that, and there are people who are now devoting more time to Social Security overall as a strategy, and those are things that, you know, if you are interested, I can talk to you about it after the program is over. Okay, the scenario 1, Tom and Nancy each filed for benefits at age 62. Okay, and because, okay, let me just give you the background here. Tom is 2 years older than Nancy, so to give you a figure here. Okay, he's 2 years older than Nancy. Nancy's income is low enough that 1/2 of Tom's benefit is higher than what her employment benefit would be. And Tom dies first, and he dies at age 85 in this scenario. So you really, if you want to work this out right, you really have to know when you're going to die. So plan it and figure it out. Okay. I tell that to people with estate planning too. I mean, the plan might work really well, and as long as you live to a certain, and who's going to die first, and all this. And if you know when you're going to get sick, and when you're going to need long-term care, we can make a plan like you would need. But anyway, so then I have people in my office saying, well, I have a family, my mother lived to be 90, and but my brother only lived to be 72, and so we go through all these things. And I still have that client who's 102 that I talked about at the last meeting, so she's still going strong. She has a big Phillies t-shirt. She's going to go in my scrap album for the office. But so you never know. But anyway, Tom and Nancy each file for benefits at age 62, and Nancy is taking half of Tom's benefit, okay? And Tom dies at 85. Scenario 2 is both of them file at the full retirement age, at age 66. So, so they take it at the 25% higher than age 62 benefit amount. And Tom dies at 85. I'm sorry to kill off the man. You know, when I studied estate planning in law school, I was of the impression women never died. Because the men always died first in the exams. And I thought it must have been very upsetting to the men in my classes, because they always had them die first. But unfortunately, that's the way the examples have been drafted. And if more men get involved in this planning, they'll reverse it. And then, we'll see what happens if the woman dies first. So, okay. Scenario 3, Tom delays his benefits to age 70. So he takes a delayed benefit and he gets that 32% bump up. Okay. And Nancy files for her own benefit at age 66. Let's see. When Tom files at 70, now this is where filing and suspending comes in. Does everybody understand what filing and suspending means? Okay, you file for benefits and then you tell the Social Security Administration, no, I don't really want to take them. I'm just filing. Okay, well, I'm putting it on record, I'm filing. And one of the people at my other law section group said that you might need to say, I'm refusing the benefits, just in case the person in Social Security doesn't get that message. Because I've already gotten a call from Social Security Administration saying, don't you want to take your benefit now? No, not ready. So anyway, he files at age 70, and Nancy becomes eligible for her spousal benefit because then he has filed. Okay, so then she takes 1/2 of his. It's kind of complicated. And Tom dies at 85. Now, scenario number 4 is one of the interesting ones on filing and suspending. Tom files and suspends his own benefit at 68. Remember, Nancy is 66 now. She's 2 years younger. Okay. So then, since he has filed and suspended, Nancy can claim for her spousal benefit at age 66. So she can do, this is one of these, I call it have your cake and eat it too. So she can take a benefit on Tom's work record, even though Tom is not taking the benefit himself. Okay, so between 66 and then Tom's full retirement age, then she's getting some additional income there. Tom claims his suspended benefit at age 70, so he has the maximum benefit based on his earning record. And then he dies at age 85. And another good thing about taking the late retirement at the age 70 for the higher earner is that then the spouse, if they die first, then the spouse who is the lower Social Security amount bumps up to the higher earnings record of the spouse who passed away. Does everybody follow me on that?
Can you say that one more time?
Okay. If you have if the higher earner continues to work, of course what we're doing is saying to the higher earner, we want you to continue to work. They might not want to continue to work. But if the higher earner continues to work until age 70, another benefit of that is if the higher earner passes away, then the spouse can collect on that higher benefit amount for the rest of her life. I'm just assuming that the higher earner is the husband and that the husband is passing away first. And then this last one is a little more tricky. Nancy files for her own benefit at age 62, so it's a lower benefit, but she's at least getting something. Tom files for his spousal benefit at age 66, so he's taking on Nancy's record. By the way, this is kind of the higher wire one, because you can have the higher earner claim on spousal benefit with the lower earners. When Tom claims on his own benefit, Nancy, who's now 68, switches to her spousal. You might want to read this a little bit more, but a special calculation is required because you can start on one and switch to another. And that is really the basic point that you should get from this. You can start taking it on my benefit, switch to a spousal benefit, so you can play out these numbers at different times to see how they work. So let's look at the numbers. Now, I've been assuming through all of this that Tom and Nancy are basically in good health and they expect to have long lives. If Tom and Nancy should be in a situation where they're in poor health and they don't expect to live very long, then the playing out the numbers for the higher benefit at age 70 is not going to make sense. And I said that in today's newspaper column. So if Tom and Nancy are planning on dying at 70, I don't know how they would manage to do that, but if they figured that was what was going to happen to them, then obviously it doesn't make sense to claim for benefits at 70 because then you're not going to recover under the system. Now, to give you an idea, it's estimated that about 72% of the people in the system take the benefit before full retirement age. So they're not getting the full benefit that they could claim under Social Security. And that's something that people should look at. There is a lot of feeling in our society that if you can get money today, why wait till tomorrow? Who knows what tomorrow will bring? But if instead, and this is more along the lines of the way I feel, it's an insurance policy that is available to you that you can use for the rest of your life. And if you look at it from that perspective, then the later claiming is better, unless, again, you're in poor health, your spouse is in poor health, or if you're not working and you need funds. Now, there are a lot of things that I did not discuss. I didn't discuss if you're disabled before retirement age. That would really extend the time here. I did not spend a lot of time discussing what happens if you continue to work, although I did mention if you continue to work while you're collecting benefits. But I just wanted to give you an overview. And that's basically it.
Janet, if anyone has questions, can they email you?
Of course.
Okay.
And then I do have my email address, colliton@collitonlaw.com, and you can send it there.
When I send out the video, I'll put your email address on there. For folks, if they have any.
Yes, no.
Is there an age at which the spouse triggers their eligibility for half of their spouse?
Well, they need to be
benefit?
62 anyway.
So 62 would be the
Yeah, but
trigger.
then it would be a reduced benefit. And-
You have to be eligible yourself in
Right.
order to be eligible for your husband or your wife's half of their benefits.
Right. And there are exceptions on some of these benefits where there's disability, but I didn't get into disability at all, so. I think, Jeff, did you want to, you had handed out a sheet on facts, did you want to discuss that? Or is there time?
Yeah, the one sheet, I'm Jeff Jones, Life Transition Services. I work with Janet And we have complementary businesses. Janet looks at the legal and healthcare issues for families. I get more involved with the what we call planning and administration, all the wonderful paperwork that we have, as part of applying for benefits. One thing I wanted families to have who are here today is the fact sheet from Social Security, because sometimes the figures are actually a little bit hard to get, and a lot of articles, they get very complicated very quickly, so I just wanted you to have a sheet that actually says what the 2012 numbers are. So I thought that was important for people to have that way and look through. And actually, on the last sheet, I'm curious always about what are the averages that people have when they get benefits in terms of what their income is, in terms of what category they are. And these show the averages, and it kind of gives you an idea of not only what your situation is compared to what the average is, but what is going on across the country as well. So when they talk about people who get Social Security retirement and how it impacts them, to know what kind of income they're actually getting from it is one of the legs of retirement, the other being either a pension or their own savings or their own IRAs, either as a defined contribution or the defined benefit you would get in a pension that way. So I thought that was a good sheet to have as well. And also I handed out a presentation, and it really is what I see families when they come to us and they're in, well, a lot of times they're already in a long-term care situation, which is actually one key indicator that retirement isn't necessarily the final thing you need to plan for. There can also be that stage of long-term care. So it certainly, retirement planning is very important, the issues that Janet brought up that way. It isn't necessarily the only planning the family would go through, because there may be long-term care issues in there as well, and those are separate issues in what retirement is. So the key point that I'd like families to know is that Social Security really is a foundation of retirement, that your other parts typically are more flexible and can vary much more, but Social Security is the foundation. And it's a very personal decision when you do take Social Security, because it depends on what your needs are. Do you have immediate needs? Unfortunately, some people in their early 60s may be unemployed, and given the choice, especially if their unemployment runs out, they may feel that they're forced to take early retirement for Social Security. That has generated somewhat of an uptick. It also depends on what your priorities are. Are you looking at more of the immediate planning, like that situation, or more of a long-term planning? And so those are the things, what we say at work is that every family has a fingerprint. Everyone has a fingerprint, but what your individual situation is determined by these needs and priorities. And there's also the potential risks, and it kind of refers to what Janet was saying about, do you get Social Security early and get that guaranteed income now, or are you looking more at the longevity risk? In your family, do people live to be, as they say, a ripe old age, and you're more concerned about where are things going to be at when I'm 90, rather than what you're looking at in the immediate sense. And part of this, the overall strategy, is getting information like you are today in terms of reading articles, but also coordinating, getting to know where this, for example, the Social Security Administration is in Westchester. Talking among family members so that they're aware of your plans as well, particularly if you're married to your spouse. And then finally, to take action based on the previous two parts. And the key thing I'd like to if you take your benefits early, and that's the blue line here, if you take them at the full retirement age at the 65 or 66 versus taking them when you're 70. And when I mentioned particularly in the 60s, that is really a pivotal time when you take that Social Security. Because if you take it sooner, you do get the income sooner, but in the end you actually end up with less overall. And that's an important point for people to realize when they're making that decision that way. And again, referring to what Janet was saying, if you delay taking your Social Security retirement by 1 year, you increase the income by 8%, but also you may increase your base amount. Because of those 35 years, you could either be making up for that zero, or you could actually be making more than you previously had, and it will increase not only the 8%, but your base rate. And as you, and it affects not just Social Security, but your other arms, your other retirement plans, you're also going to be contributed to if you continue to work. You're decreasing the term of your retirement. So instead of, for example, planning for 30 years, you may be planning for 29-year retirement. So that would increase what you're able to take on a normal basis. And you would also increase your savings as well outside of retirement. And this is just a table just to summarize what Janet was talking about in terms of taking it at the different stages. And it's interesting because the full retirement age, sometimes they call it the normal retirement age. And as Janet pointed out, it's not normal anymore to take it at 66. It's actually more normal to take it earlier. So even the terminology is beginning to change over time. What is and is not normal. And there are different reasons in terms of, for the early retirement, it could be that unemployment issue and that they need the money now. At the 66, it kind of reminds me of Walter Cronkite. When he retired, he was healthy, he was active, but he retired. And so somebody asked him finally, why did you retire? And he says, I just thought I was supposed to. Well, he actually was still, in his late 80s, he was still going around, making talks, doing very active lifestyle. And he finally said, if I knew that, I'd have such a great life here, I would have continued to work, because there was no reason. And now contrast that with Andy Rooney. Andy Rooney was in his 90s, I believe. And so he took the total other extreme where he went into really a late retirement, kind of a very late retirement for him, God bless him. But so that's what I'm saying, it's a very personal decision, and what is normal before is not necessarily normal today. And so the relationships for a beneficiary, it could be you're looking at Social Security for yourself, you're looking at issues that could be related to your spouse. An unfortunate trend to a degree, and this has been brought up, is that seniors are beginning to get divorced in higher numbers than they have in the past. And that's a very unfortunate circumstance. But there are issues that way that families need to think about and under certain circumstances. Also, of course, how if somebody passes away, how benefits get changed. It actually shows as joint benefits. If you look on the last sheet of that fact sheet, it shows that the combined Social Security benefit is actually less than double of what the individual beneficiary gets. If somebody passes away, if the high-income earner passes away before the low-income earner, that low-income earner, who's the spouse, may be able to step up to the higher amount if that's high-income earner passes away. And finally, we do have situations where you have seniors and have children that they need to consider. You know, we have the situation where here. So things have gotten so much more flexible than they have been in the past, and these are the issues that many families need to address. So this, the questions people need to ask is the crystal ball: how long will I live? And do I need to make up a shortfall now? And how long do I want to work? You know, do you want to change your work and donate your time? Or do you want to continue to work because you enjoy it so much and you just want to continue that way? And also spouse issues, the issues of file and suspend, Janet mentioned. The difference between having your own benefit versus a spousal benefit. There could actually be differences. You may be able to claim based on what your spouse earns rather than you, and it may be beneficial that way. And also the death benefits associated with Social Security. The key thing, and I really want to emphasize this, is that the issues that they're talking about today, in terms of change in Social Security, it does not affect current beneficiaries. That's a very important point to bring up. And also it does not affect near-term beneficiaries. For the other people who are younger, say younger than 55, that is where they're talking about the issues. And the idea is that they want to give people time to prepare, time to begin to realize that they may need to make more changes in the future than what the current generation has. And they really want people to start thinking about that. That is what it is. It isn't that it's for the current or near-term beneficiaries. And again, a key thing, retirement and long-term care are two totally separate issues. It is a very bad idea to bundle those issues together. Very different circumstances for families, and that in and of itself is its own thought. And since we're at a university, I felt I had to give homework. I'm sorry. It's just. So the homework is, and does anyone know who or what a representative payee is? If you know, don't say it, but if you could raise your hand. That would be an excellent homework question. Okay. And then also see what other benefits that you or your spouse are entitled to. Believe it or not, a lot of people are entitled to benefits they don't know about. One is with veterans or other work-related benefits. We actually have people who don't realize there's, for example, a group term policy life insurance that they have, even though they're retired, it would continue on. So definitely, I would say, if you go home, make a list of what your assets, your income, your debt, and your expenses are. And it doesn't take 5 minutes to do that. I tried this. It can get very difficult. But it can be very instructive because it will give you more a sense of what your situation is now so you can plan for the future.
I know that we're at the end, but there's one very quick thing I forgot to say. On Tom and Nancy, just take a look on the second sheet at age 90 on the monthly income. Under scenario number 1, where they took it early, the monthly income would be $38,047. Okay, for Nancy. And on scenario number 4, where they have the labor and suspend, the monthly income would be, I'm sorry, the annual income, monthly would be great. The annual income would be $66,962. The difference at age 90 of having $66,962 versus $38,047. It's a big difference. And the difference in lifetime benefit is about $400,000 there. Thank you.
I hate to say that we have to end this informative meeting, and I wish we had more time. Thank you so much. And again, I'd like to do this again in the upcoming months.
It's always a pleasure. I really appreciate everyone.
Thank you very much for coming, both of you.
And again, if anybody has any questions for Janet, I'm going to be sending out the video presentation and her email address for anyone who
might need some more information. And I'll thank you very much.
Have a great afternoon. Thank you.
And your articles in the business section are always very informative. I read them every week.